They tried to move me like furniture. Instead, I learned the paperwork. At my mother's memorial brunch, I'd just intercepted a dropped deviled egg from hitting the cream carpet, balancing it on a napkin with a smile worn thin by 2 hours of small talk and Senka. My sister Lee, always in control, always with a director's voice, looked across the room and announced in front of everyone, "You can just sit over there, Ruth. I've got this." She took the plate from my trembling hand and dropped it into the garbage with a tight-lipped smirk, as if I'd been caught dipping my fingers in the caviar. The room stilled. All eyes flicked toward me, then away, like a flock of birds evading a hawk. It wasn't the first time Lee had managed to make me feel like a wayward child at 61. I'd served in Afghanistan and could field strip an M16 in 40 seconds. Now I was sidelined at my own mother's funeral reception. I tried to joke it off. Guess I'll just hold up the wall then. But nobody laughed except Larry, my brother-in-law, who chuckled nervously and stuffed another mini quiche into his mouth. The humiliation sat heavy in my stomach, mingling with grief and the cheap coffee. The house was swollen with relatives who hadn't visited Mom in years but showed up for the casserole and gossip. Lee floated from group to group, dispensing hugs and anecdotes about Mom's bridge club, while I was relegated to nodding at Uncle Stan's stories about his bum knee. The air buzzed with coded questions. "So, what will you do now? You holding up okay?" The unspoken subtext, "Where will you go? What will you get?" hung just beneath their voices. Lee had moved back to Baton Rouge 2 years ago when Mom's memory started slipping. She liked to point out that she handled everything because someone had to. Her tone made it clear that someone wasn't me. She'd orchestrated every detail of Mom's care, hired the nurses, coordinated donations for the new stained glass at St. Augustine's, all while keeping receipts she later fanned out like playing cards anytime someone suggested sharing responsibilities. Our inheritance was an open secret among the family. Mom's modest yellow house near City Park, and whatever money was left after her final hospital stay. Lee had complained about hospital bills, hospice costs, maintenance, implying that if there was anything left at all, it would be thanks to her frugality. The mortgage was paid off, but Baton Rouge taxes weren't kind, and neither were repairmen. When Aunt Jo quietly pulled me aside near the powder room, she pressed a crisp sympathy card in my hand. Inside was a $50 bill folded twice and an apology for how things turned out. I squeezed her hand, gently enough not to show how much it hurt, and tried not to think about how low I'd sunk in family estimation, a combat vet getting pity dollars at her own mother's funeral. The real indignity came when Lee formally announced, loud enough for anyone within reach of the potato salad, "Ruth will be staying with us until she gets her feet under her." Head swiveled toward me, a grown woman supposedly unable to care for herself. "Just until you sort through your things," she added sweetly, as if she were doing me a favor and not quietly evicting me from my childhood home. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. In the stunned silence that followed, Lee handed me Mom's spare keys, like an inheritance of used Kleenex. If you think Baton Rouge humidity is suffocating, try being pitied by your own blood in your living room. The first night at Lee's felt like sleeping in a museum where nothing belonged to me, not even my dignity. She tucked me into their guest room with floral wallpaper too cheery by half and towels folded with military precision, her own little joke. There was no mention of how long I'd be there or what would happen next with Mom's estate, just an awkward silence after Larry wished me goodnight while checking his phone for football scores. By morning, Lee was already circling like a project manager on Too Much Espresso. She'd scheduled appointments for herself, legal matters, she said vaguely, but left me a list: take out trash before 9 a.m., sort old photos, separate keepsakes from donations, don't let Larry touch Mom's sugar bowls, antiques. When I lingered too long over one black and white photo of Mom as a girl on Lake Pontchartrain, Lee breezed through and snatched it up without asking. "This stays with family," she said sharply, as if I were an interloper rifling through someone else's past. For days, we orbited each other, Lee bustling around with her binder full of estate papers, Larry drifting between work calls and ESPN, Me pecking at boxed leftovers and pretending not to overhear whispered phone conversations behind closed doors. Anytime I brought up the house or bank accounts, Lee responded with vague platitudes about finalizing things or protecting everyone's interests. Her lawyer, a smug man named Burgess who once called me Miss Ruth as though I were 80, became her frequent confidant. Over lunch at Louie's Cafe, her choice, Lee laid out her version of events. Everything was complicated, Mom's finances were messier than they looked, she'd just need more time before decisions could be made. After all, she said pointedly while sipping iced tea, you were away during most of this. It felt less like an explanation than an indictment, the implication clear that deployment miles erased filial rights. I started noticing odd details. Personal mail arriving addressed to Mom at Lee's home instead of mine. Emails from banks forwarded without comment. Larry mumbling about needing money for sudden home repairs. Even Aunt Jo began calling less frequently after Lee mentioned confidential proceedings taking up all her time. The few times I pushed back, "Can we talk about what the will actually says?" Lee would sigh loudly as if burdened beyond endurance by my questions. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," she said once while reorganizing her spice rack, alphabetically, naturally. When I joked dryly that at least Cumin wasn't inheriting more than I was, Larry snorted beer through his nose. Lee did not laugh. That Friday night, I overheard them arguing behind their bedroom door. "She'll ask again." "So what? She has no idea how any of this works." "You promised we'd handle it. If anyone finds out about—" A chair scraped across hardwood. Silence stretched thin like piano wire. The next day, I checked the mail early. Tucked amid junk flyers was a letter from First Louisiana Trusts, addressed to the estate of Lorraine Clementine Womack. My hand shook opening it, not from nerves but from anger wound so tight it could snap bone. The letter referenced distributions pending review by both beneficiaries. It listed only 2 names, mine and Lee's, but all communications had gone through Lee. When pressed about the letter later that morning, over pancakes, "You opened estate mail?" Lee pursed her lips so tight they turned white. "Didn't want you worrying about legalese," she said flatly. She leaned across the table so only I could hear. "You know Mom wanted what's best. Try not to make this ugly." It wasn't ugly yet, but ugliness hovers near silence. If you think secrets sleep easy behind closed doors, wait until one wakes you up hungry in someone else's house. Lee underestimated 2 things: my access to decent coffee and my ability to read fine print. Over breakfast one morning, a bowl of instant grits so pale they looked ghostly, I called Aunt Jo under pretense of asking after her arthritis. After our small talk stumbled through weather updates and TV recommendations, she insisted Judge Judy had lost her edge. Jo slipped in something odd. "Lee told me y'all decided you didn't need to see all those old statements." I bit back a curse and asked if she remembered seeing any actual documents at Brunchgate. That brunch, as Jo solemnly called it. She hadn't. Not even a peek at Mom's will or any trust paperwork beyond what Burgess waved around like incense at Easter Mass. That afternoon, I waited until Lee left for yoga and rummaged through her office drawers under pretext of finding stamps, which really were there. Lee is nothing if not methodical. Hidden beneath old Rotary Club newsletters was a manila folder labeled simply LCW, Estate. It held copies, not originals, of both Mom's will and an unfamiliar insurance policy that named us both equally as beneficiaries. I scanned enough wills during deployments, for fallen soldiers who never expected their families would fight over metal trinkets, to know when something felt off. The language in Mom's will referenced a trust but didn't specify its terms outright. Instead, there was mention of distribution per attached addendum, which was missing from this copy. That night over microwaved leftover po' boy, not bad if you drown it in hot sauce, I cornered Larry watching Wheel of Fortune. "Has Lee talked about splitting anything yet, or what happens if we sell a house?" He fidgeted with the TV remote like he'd rather take shrapnel than answer honestly. She handles all that stuff," he mumbled finally before bailing for bed early. My sarcasm became armor against rising panic. I joked about having fewer rights than Lee's poodle. At least Polly gets groomed once a month. None of it landed. none dispelled the sense that something critical was happening while I stood outside looking in. I spent hours online reading about Louisiana succession law between crossword puzzles, the kind where every answer sounds faintly French unless you know better. When Burgess called one evening while Lee cooked dinner, fajitas this time, he must have thought he had speakerphone privacy. She hasn't seen anything official? No. You're clear then, but don't delay payouts longer than 30 days or compliance gets jumpy. I just need her gone first. A cabinet slammed hard enough that Polly barked twice before sulking under the table with me. Next morning, I called First Louisiana Trusts, pretending to clarify an address update. Just want those little details right. The board clerk said only both named beneficiaries could sign off on distributions, and so far only one had responded formally. Lee Clements, Womack Duval. That night at dinner, a joyless affair involving spaghetti squash, I brought up burial plots instead of bank accounts. If there are choices left, I'd rather not get boxed up next to folks who can't answer questions. Lee dropped her fork hard enough for sauce to spatter on pristine white linen. Larry excused himself before dessert arrived, the dog following him as though sensing which ship might stay afloat. Sometimes humor is all that keeps you above water when everyone else insists you're already sunk. If you think trust is expensive now, wait until you see what betrayal costs later. After 2 weeks in exile seasoned mostly by sarcasm and instant coffee, I cracked open my navy green duffel bag, the same one that survived 4 base transfers, and retrieved my worn leather folder labeled Important. Inside were discharge papers from 20 years ago, somewhat less useful now, old tax returns even less, and contact info for May Duval, friend of a friend attorney who specialized in elder law, but owed me for 3 years' worth of holiday fruitcakes anyway. May wore lipstick that clashed beautifully with her suits and greeted me at her downtown office as though we were meeting undercover overseas instead of beside a ficus plant drooping from neglect. After brief but necessary commiseration, Lee always did have sticky fingers, May reviewed copies of Mom's will and insurance docs wordlessly before pulling out her legal pad. Your mother set up something smart, a revocable trust tied directly to distribution clauses, she observed dryly. But your sister is acting as sole communications point, like Fort Knox. May typed out letters requesting full disclosure under Louisiana law. Certified copies would go to both First Louisiana Trusts and Burgess's office. We moved precisely, not hysterically, because nothing terrifies bullies more than paperwork filled out properly by people they misjudge. May coached me on how and when to ask questions publicly. Ask for written proof of trust addendums. Demand accounting ledgers for expenditures made since Mom fell ill. Request insurance dispersal forms signed by both parties. We filed formal notice, no assets release until both beneficiaries signed off together. Next step, forensic review. A hired accountant ready to comb every transaction down to missing pennies. May leaned back with grim satisfaction. If anyone edited or redirected funds after Mom lost capacity, we'll see. When word got back to Lee via Burgess's terse email, your sister has involved counsel. Silence descended over their house like smog before payday. Dinner became monosyllabic. Sticky notes appeared labeling which condiments were communal. Larry avoided eye contact altogether. Polly chose neutrality by sleeping beneath my chair instead of theirs. Sometimes humor is all that keeps you above water when everyone else insists you're already sunk. If you think secrets thrive in darkness, they rot faster under inspection lights run by lawyers' clocks. When people say confrontation is cleansing, they've never waded through Baton Rouge humidity wearing borrowed shoes waiting for truth that tastes more bitter than chicory coffee. Lee did not respond well when served formal notice from May via hand-delivered envelope marked urgent that all account statements had been subpoenaed, pending review by our forensic accountant Marty Gillis, CPA tastefully discreet. She slammed kitchen cabinets hard enough for paint chips to flake free. Larry muttered apologies but barely registered more than background noise. The hidden clause, the detail May intuited but only just confirmed, surfaced via Marty, distribution language stating that any beneficiary found undermining or disrespecting another sibling's share would have their portion reduced according to trustee discretion, a rare clause born from decades-old family feuds Mom apparently remembered better than any bridge score. Forensic review revealed withdrawals routed through duplicate maintenance charges, signed by both Burgess and Lee, totaling nearly $18,000 over 6 months during Mom's hospice care, a sum Marty flagged for its regularity despite no commensurate invoices at local vendors. One contractor didn't exist beyond an LLC postbox.
Insurance payments showed secondary routing into holding accounts, registered under generic family trusts that trace neatly back into investments, managed solely by Burgess's office partner, not illegal per se unless earmarked as estate distributions, requiring co-signature authorization, which they weren't. When Marty presented findings during mediations arranged at May's office, neutral ground chosen specifically because neither Lee nor Larry knew where she kept Spear Advil, Burgess attempted platitudes before muttering something about administrative oversight. May countered smoothly with copies of every flagged withdrawal. Marty explained his methodology patiently enough even Larry seemed cowed by numbers bigger than anything ESPN stats could pitch mid-game. Lee did not look at me once throughout mediation, not even when May recited aloud the respect clause tying distributions directly back into documented treatment between siblings. Any party found coercing or denigrating another's standing or estate rights forfeits equal standing.
She finally turned toward me, sharp-eyed but silent. We settled fast after that. Lee conceded repayment plus agreed upon split overseen directly by First Louisiana Trust's Compliance Board, a win neither pretty nor easy, but cleaner than public court proceedings would ever offer. She moved out within days. Larry awkwardly invited me, and Polly, for Sunday lunch, which we politely declined. I took keys back quietly, not triumphantly, but with renewed clarity that family doesn't always mean safety, nor justice require kindness first. Polly wagged twice when asked if she'd miss communal spaghetti squash dinners. Not exactly resounding loyalty, but loyalty nonetheless. Even Baton Rouge air tasted lighter outside war zones built by blood instead of bullets. If you think dignity can't be reclaimed from wreckage, you've never watched someone try and fail to move you without your consent. Scene 1. I keep Mom's photo above the mantel now, a black and white shot rescued from donation, with Polly asleep beneath my feet while thunder rattles distant windows. Sometimes Aunt Jo visits, bringing lemon bars wrapped tight against humidity. Sometimes we sit quietly, listing old grudges never spoken aloud until recently. Scene 2. At City Park Community Day, I'm cornered by Mrs. Landry, who asks why I'm smiling more these days. Is bingo paying out better or just fewer funerals? My laugh spills easier now. I tell her dignity isn't estate property after all. Sometimes it's just knowing when not to look away from what's yours by right instead of luck or bloodline. Polly wagged twice when asked if she'd miss communal spaghetti squash dinners. Not exactly resounding loyalty, but loyalty nonetheless. Even Baton Rouge air tasted lighter outside war zones built by blood instead of bullets. If you think dignity can't be reclaimed from wreckage, you've never watched someone try and fail to move you without your consent. Scene 1. I keep Mom's photo above the mantel now, a black and white shot rescued from donation, with Polly asleep beneath my feet while thunder rattles distant windows. Sometimes Aunt Jo visits, bringing lemon bars wrapped tight against humidity. Sometimes we sit quietly listing old grudges, never spoken aloud until recently. Scene 2. At City Park Community Day, I'm cornered by Mrs. Landry, who asks why I'm smiling more these days. Is bingo paying out better or just fewer funerals? My laugh spills easier now. I tell her dignity isn't estate property after all. Sometimes it's just knowing when not to look away from what's yours by right instead of luck or bloodline politeness. Polly's wagged twice when asked if she'd missed communal spaghetti squash dinners. Not exactly resounding loyalty, but loyalty nonetheless. Even Baton Rouge air tasted lighter outside war zones built by blood instead of bullets. If you think dignity can't be reclaimed from wreckage, you've never watched someone try and fail to move you without your consent. Scene 1. I keep Mom's photo above the mantel, now a black and white shot rescued from donation, with Polly asleep beneath my feet while thunder rattles distant windows. Sometimes Aunt Jo visits, bringing lemon bars wrapped tight against humidity. Sometimes we sit quietly, listing old grudges never spoken aloud until recently. Scene 2. At City Park Community Day, I'm cornered by Mrs. Landry, who asks why I'm smiling more these days. Is bingo paying out better or just fewer funerals? My laugh spills easier now. I tell her dignity isn't estate property after all. Sometimes it's just knowing when not to look away from what's yours by right instead of luck or bloodline. Polly's wagged twice when asked if she'd missed communal spaghetti squash dinners.
Not exactly resounding loyalty, but loyalty nonetheless. Even Baton Rouge air tasted lighter outside war zones built by blood instead of bullets. If you think dignity can't be reclaimed from wreckage, you've never watched someone try and fail to move you without your consent. Scene 1. I keep Mom's photo above the mantel, now a black and white shot rescued from donation, with Polly asleep beneath my feet while thunder rattles distant windows. Sometimes Aunt Jo visits, bringing lemon bars wrapped tight against humidity. Sometimes we sit quietly, listing old grudges never spoken aloud until recently. Scene 2. At City Park Community Day, I'm cornered by Mrs. Landry, who asks why I'm smiling more these days. Is bingo paying out better or just fewer funerals? My laugh spills easier now. I tell her dignity isn't a state property after all. Sometimes it's just knowing when not to look away from what's yours by right instead of luck or bloodline. Polly's wagged twice when asked if she'd miss communal spaghetti squash dinners. Not exactly resounding loyalty, but loyalty nonetheless. Even Baton Rouge air tasted lighter outside war zones built by blood instead of bullets. If you think dignity can't be reclaimed from wreckage, you've never watched someone try and fail to move you without your consent. Scene 1. I keep Mom's photo above the mantel, now a black and white shot rescued from donation, with Polly asleep beneath my feet while thunder rattles distant windows. Sometimes Aunt Jo visits, bringing lemon bars wrapped tight against humidity. Sometimes we sit quietly, listing old grudges never spoken aloud until recently. Scene 2. At City Park Community Day, I'm cornered by Mrs. Landry, who asks why I'm smiling more these days. Is bingo paying out better or just fewer funerals? My laugh spills easier now. I tell her dignity isn't a state property after all. Sometimes it's just knowing when not to look away from what's yours by right instead of luck or bloodline. Polly's wagged twice when asked if she'd miss communal spaghetti squash dinners. Not exactly resounding loyalty, but loyalty nonetheless. Even Baton Rouge air tasted lighter outside war zones built by blood instead of bullets. If you think dignity can't be reclaimed from wreckage, you've never watched someone try and fail to move you without your consent. One morning, I wake to the sharp scent of fresh-cut grass and the distant whine of a mower, the world outside insisting on greener things. For a moment, I lie there, letting memories drift, Mom humming in the kitchen, Lee's laughter echoing down hallways when we were both too young to imagine ever fighting over anything. The jagged edges have dulled. The house feels less like a battlefield and more like a half-finished quilt waiting for someone brave enough to pick up the needle. An envelope slides through the mail slot just as I settle in with coffee. The return address is unfamiliar, the handwriting careful but hesitant. Inside is a brief note from Lee, stiff apology lines wrapped around some half-hearted pleasantry about hoping you're well. She encloses a faded photo of us as girls on the levee, arms intertwined, muddy shoes and big smiles. For a moment, I let myself ache for that innocence, then tuck the picture beside Mom's on the mantel. After lunch, I take Polly to City Park, where magnolia petals scatter across the walkways like confetti for no occasion. We pass Mrs. Landry holding court near the pond and a gaggle of kids chasing geese, their shrieks pure chaos and delight. I watch them with a pang. How simple it once was to run towards everything without counting what you might lose. Later, I stand in the garden, hands deep in wet soil planting tomatoes as clouds gather overhead. The first drops tap my shoulders, but I don't move, letting the rain wash grip from my fingers and doubt from my mind. When I glance back at the house, my house, I catch my reflection in the kitchen window. Older, yes, but upright and unmovable.
Lemon and sugar linger on my tongue as I lean in the doorway, watching Aunt Jo polish her stories to a shine at my kitchen table. She tells one about Mom's first car, a temperamental Corvair, blue as a heron, that once stranded them on River Road until a stranger with jumper cables came along. I picture Mom's patient smile, the way she'd look at a problem straight on, never afraid to get her hands dirty if it meant getting home. Polly nosed her way into Joe's lap, rewarded with crumbs and gentle pats. The old clock ticked steadily, marking time as if nothing had ever been out of place. Joe glanced at the photo on the mantel and squeezed my arm, her grip surprisingly firm. "Your mother would like this," she said simply. After she left, I lingered in the front yard, listening to cicadas sweep the evening air into something almost sacred. The neighbors' porch lights flickered on one by one. A few called out good night, and I answered back without thinking who might be listening. For once, there was no need to guard my words.
Inside, mail waited on the hall table. Utility bill, catalog, another envelope from Lee. This time, just a single line. Thinking of you, scrawled beneath the clipped news article about Garden Club awards. No apologies, no requests. I tucked it away without anger or longing. Wind rattled the windows as night deepened and rain threatened again. I slept with the window open, content to let the world in. Rain, stories, even wounds slowly closing over with each ordinary day that no longer demanded permission for its quiet joys. Morning brings a strange kind of calm, the kind you notice only because it wasn't there before. I walked barefoot through the house, past the spot in the hallway where sunbeams gather in a perfect square, and paused to let warmth reach my bones. Polly follows, toenails clicking softly, waiting for our routine. A stroll in the backyard, coffee on the stoop, ritual by ritual, reclaiming this place as ours. The garden surprises me with 2 bright tomatoes ripened overnight. I twist them free, remembering how Mom used to cup them in her palm, weighing patience and promise. I wipe one clean on my shirt and bite down. Juice sweet and messy, sunlight tangled with memory. There's nobody to impress or appease, and no performance in loving something so simple. I put on an old record, one of Mom's favorites, and let the music fill every empty corner. For once, I don't brace myself for someone's criticism or correction. Instead, I hum along, off-key and unashamed, watching Polly nose under the kitchen chair for a treat. Outside, the world is loud with birds and lawnmowers and the neighbors' laughter rolling over fences. When the phone rings in the afternoon, I answer without flinching. It's just Mrs. Landry asking about a ride to her appointment next week. She doesn't mention the past unless I do, and today I don't feel like testing old wounds. After we hang up, I carry laundry out to the line and watch cotton shirts flutter like flags, a quiet declaration that I am still here, making ordinary days mine again. Polly sprawls in the shade, tongue lolling, while I pin a final sheet and stand back to admire the ragged symmetry of my handiwork. The breeze is generous, a small grace, and my mind drifts to all the beds I've made and remade throughout my life, never certain where I'd be allowed to stay. There's comfort now in knowing no one will come to pack my things into boxes or direct me to a guest room with floral wallpaper. Mail carriers wave from the street. I wave back, a neighbor at last instead of a guest passing through. I find myself humming without reason, just because the air feels lighter. When Polly barks at a squirrel, I join her on the steps, sharing the quiet mischief of watching the world go by with nothing pressing to prove or defend. As dusk gathers, porch lights flicker on across the block, and laughter drifts between houses. Someone starts a grill, and the scent, charcoal and spice, stirs a hunger that has nothing to do with food. I realize it's been days since I've worried who might be keeping count or watching over my shoulder. Inside, I set the tomatoes on the counter for tomorrow's breakfast. The house is softly lit, peaceful but not empty. Everywhere are small marks of surviving and settling in. Tonight I'll sleep with windows open wide, trusting the roof above and the quiet earned below, finally at home among what's left and what's possible. Rain drums gentle and steady through the early hours, filling the gutters and giving the thirsty grass a second wind. I wake to the lull of it, letting the sound root me right where I belong. Pawing noses at the back door with her usual morning optimism, ready for whatever adventure or wet paws the day might bring. Coffee brewed, I curl into my favorite kitchen chair and watch drops chase each other down the pane. The outside world is blurred, softened at the edges, every sharp memory held at bay by the hush. My hands rest easy around the chipped mug as I mentally tally what needs doing and what can wait, a luxury in itself. Later, neighbor kids dash laughing through puddles, plastic boots splashing a rebellion against grown-up tidiness. Their mothers wave apologies, but I wave back, unconcerned if muddy footprints find my stoop.
There's joy in a mess you're not forced to clean on command. By late afternoon, the rain has swept on, leaving everything rinsed and shining. I wander through the yard to inspect what's left behind. Petals heavy with water, a worm wriggling happily deeper into the dark earth. The cycle keeps turning, indifferent to histories or heartache. All that's required is showing up for it, honest and unhidden. As evening settles, I set out fresh towels for Polly and myself. The house breathes with us. No locked doors, no secrets, just worn floors and windows wide to whatever tomorrow brings. On Sunday, the smell of bacon drifts through open windows, mixing with gardenia from the bush just beyond the porch. I stand at the stove, spatula in hand, humming along to a radio gospel show. Polly circles my feet hopefully, tail swishing each time a crumb falls. The kitchen table is cluttered with coffee rings and the crossword Aunt Jo left behind last week, half finished in her loopy penmanship. Between bites, I leaf through an old scrapbook I found buried in Mom's closet. Each page is thick with ticket stubs, faded programs, and yellowing Polaroids, evidence of ordinary joys collected like rare birds. One photo catches my eye. Lee and me in matching Easter dresses, arms thrown around each other with the careless trust of sisters who still believe grown-ups know what they're doing. I run my thumb over our faces, feeling that tug, a longing for what was easy, or at least simpler. After breakfast, I set to work in the garden, pulling weeds from between stubborn rows of beans. The soil is warm and forgiving under my nails. Across the fence, Mrs. Landry calls out, "You look just like your mother out there." I wave my trowel in salute, and she laughs, white hair pinned up against the creeping heat. Later, I drive Aunt Jo to her hair appointment at the faded strip mall near Perkins Road. She talks nonstop about her stylist's granddaughter, bright girl, wants to be a nurse, and how there's no decent bread left at Shiro's since Hector retired. At the salon, she insists on paying for my coffee at the vending machine. Family tradition. Ladies don't show up empty-handed or empty-cupped. Waiting for her, I watch rain clouds gather in the reflection of the plate glass window. My phone buzzes, a message from Larry with a blurry photo of Polly he snapped during an afternoon walk. "She misses you already." I reply with a simple thank you. Bridges don't rebuild themselves overnight, but neither do they always stay broken. Back home, I patch a loose board on the back steps, while Polly investigates every muddy paw print as if she's solving a mystery. When the neighbor's kid wanders over with his plastic truck and a question about army stories, I sit on the steps beside him and recount only the parts that end with laughter or lucky escapes. His eyes go wide. Polly flops beside us as though she's heard it all before. Around dusk, there's a knock at the door, the shy kind that means someone isn't sure they belong. It's Lee's daughter, Amy, holding a Tupperware of lemon squares and looking sheepish. She says, "Mom's hi," she mumbles, before asking if she can borrow some basil for her pasta. We walk together to the garden. I show her where to cut what she needs, and she tells me she's thinking about switching majors. Maybe art history instead of business. Do what you love, I say without irony.
As she leaves, she glances back at me like she wants to say more but thinks better of it. The screen door creaks shut behind her, and I realize how easily habits return. Hospitality without calculation, kindness without contracts attached. Nights are easier now. Sometimes I sit on the porch listening to frogs sing in ditches swollen from last week's rain. Sometimes Aunt Jo calls just to check if I remembered to lock up before bed. You never know these days. Other times I read until my eyes blur, Vietnam memoirs and community cookbooks side by side on my lap, until sleep claims me gently. On Wednesdays, there's bingo at St. Augustine's Parish Hall. Mrs. Landry always saves me a seat near the front, where it's loudest, and no one cares if you mutter sarcastic commentary about someone else's lucky streaks. One night, my card fills up all at once. As folks clap politely, I can't help but laugh out loud. A real laugh from deep in my chest. Not because of winning, but because for once, nothing is missing or owed. Mail brings its own rhythm. Flyers for gutter cleaning services. Veterans get 10% off. Catalogs no one ordered. An occasional handwritten note from Aunt Jo or Amy.
usually recipes or clippings about dogs who rescue their owners during tornadoes. Thought of you and Polly. Every now and then, there's an envelope from Lee. A clipped article about local property taxes or a recipe for cold potato soup hastily scrawled in her neat block letters. She signs them, "Take care now." No declarations or demands. Sometimes things break. A leaky faucet, a loose shutter, and fixing them feels like both duty and blessing. I learn which neighbors have good ladders. In return, I lend out extension cords and jumper cables as needed. In small ways, we stitch each other's lives together without keeping score. I plant zinnias along the front walk where Mom once tried, and failed, to coax roses from stubborn Louisiana clay. Children passing by on their bikes call it hellos, their parents nod from porches with ice drinks sweating rings into painted wicker tables. A slow sense of belonging grows, not loud or dramatic, but steady as roots taking hold beneath battered brick foundations. On afternoons when clouds hang low and thunder rumbles off toward Lake Pontchartrain, Polly curls close to my feet as if reminding me that storms pass whether we are ready or not. Sometimes Lee calls, not often, but enough, and speaks mostly about Amy or Larry or weather patterns threatening her new tomato plants uptown. Our words are careful but not cold. Neither of us expects more than what is offered. Aunt Jo surprises me one evening by showing up with fried chicken wrapped tight against humidity and a stack of old board games under her arm. "Your mother never let me win at Parcheesi." We play late into moonlit hours while cicadas serenade our attempts at strategy. We argue over rules until we're breathless with laughter and crumbs dust every surface. The house holds every sound without complaint. Footsteps across creaking floorboards, kettle whistles from kitchen windows thrown open wide for breeze or birdsong, distant music drifting from backyard parties up the block. Amy paints me a watercolor of City Park one weekend, a gift for helping revise her essay on French Impressionism, and shyly asks if it can hang above my writing desk. When Lee comes by to drop off some old casserole dishes, they're Mom's, thought you should have them, her eyes linger on that painting longer than necessary before turning away. Each day settles more gently than the last. Routines form around morning walks with Polly and late-night check-ins with Aunt Jo or Mrs. Landry when lightning bugs swarm above dewy grass. One afternoon, Larry swings by with his toolbox, asked or not, to help fix a sagging gutter after last week's storm took out 3 shinders and nearly drowned my impatience with homeownership. We work mostly in silence until he asks quietly if it ever gets easier, this business of families trying to forgive themselves for not knowing better sooner. I tell him maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But either way, everyone gets another chance every time they knock on someone else's door without expecting it to open. In small comforts, a fresh tomato sliced onto buttered bread, sunlight warming dust motes above Mom's old piano keys, I find proof that kindness rarely arrives how you expect, but always leaves something softer behind. Polly ages faster than I'm ready for. Gray creeps into her muzzle, and some days she limps after chasing rabbits through tall grass too long. Still, every morning she's first at the door waiting for another lap around our block, as if tomorrow is promised by sheer force of will. Evenings stretch slow. Porch lights flicker on one by one while neighbors settle into their own rituals, until sometimes it feels as if Baton Rouge exists solely to cradle our ordinary strivings against all evidence to the contrary. When mail arrives addressed only to me, no estate notices or legal demands, I savor opening them, even if it's just junk coupons or reminders about flu shots down at Walgreens. Some nights Lee sends nothing but silence, which lands softer now than any apology could. And some mornings bring nothing more than dew slicking green blades across my toes while Polly bounds ahead, unburdened by memory or regret. The city changes around us. New families move in beside Mrs. Landry. Children grow tall enough to steal figs over backyard fences. Local news frets over river levels while church bells mark time regardless who listens. When holidays come around, Aunt Jo bakes pies that taste like forgiveness, even when crusts burn a little around the edges. Amy helps decorate windowsills with paper snowflakes, while Larry mans the grill outside. Despite December chill, it isn't Christmas without something charred. And when quiet falls thick like velvet over everything, the world reduced to heartbeat and breath, I sit in Mom's old chair beneath soft lamplight reading letters from years past until laughter finds its way back unbidden into my throat. It never escapes me how easily things might have been lost. This kitchen light spilling golden across tile floors worn by decades of comings and goings, this easy rhythm of voices rising over harmony over nothing more urgent than whether magnolias bloom earlier this year than last. And always there is something left behind. A bowl half filled with garden tomatoes ripening by kitchen sunbeams, Aunt Jo humming softly while putting away dishes after dinner, Polly stretched full length underfoot dreaming whatever dogs dream when they finally come home for good. Polly snows gentle reassurance beneath my feet as I shuffle through Sunday paper coupons with Aunt Jo humming Stevie Wonder under her breath beside me. Somewhere outside, children shriek over makeshift sprinklers while laundry snaps bright against blue sky, the ordinary claiming its stubborn victory over what once threatened to unravel everything held dear. Later, Amy visits straight from class wearing paint on her jeans. She brings lemon bars wrapped in wax paper and news about an art show downtown where her City Park painting gets hung alongside strangers. We walk together among zinnias blooming wild along cracked flagstones. She laughs when Polly noses too close to her lunch bag, but doesn't pull away this time.
As dusk thickens, Lee calls. Not long, not dramatic, just enough to ask after tomatoes and promise next time we'll try again over coffee instead of contracts. When we hang up, there is quiet where anger once lived. Outside, porch lights blink, brave against deepening dark, while frogs tune up along ditches filled from last week's rainstorm. Sometimes dignity looks exactly like this. Keys resting easy on your own table, the night air drifting through curtains you chose, and grief folded gently away beside your best-loved photos. All yours, and nobody else moving you, ever again, without your say-so. I catch myself humming as I sweep dust bunnies from beneath the sideboard, the bristles of the old broom stirring up memories with each pass. The house sounds different now, laughter echoing from the TV in the living room instead of angry phone calls or urgent, whispered strategy sessions behind closed doors. I set out a second mug for coffee, just in case Aunt Jo drops by unannounced, which she does often, wandering in with her rain hat askew and a new rumor about Mrs. Laundry's nephew to dissect. One afternoon, I find myself elbow-deep in flour and nostalgia, rolling out pie crust with Mom's battered pen. Amy perches on a stool, chin in hand, watching with the kind of reverence only the young have for family recipes. "You always make it look easy," she says, flour dusting her cheek like war paint. "It isn't, but you get better at hiding the mess." We listen to the radio while baking, old jazz records, local weather reports threatening rain that never quite materializes. When we pull the pie from the oven, Aunt Jo arrives bearing a jar of rosehip jam and a stack of crossword puzzles carefully clipped from old newspapers. She settles at the table, reading clues aloud as Polly circles beneath for fallen crumbs and praise. Sometimes Lee's name comes up, but not in anger now, more like a song stuck in your head that fades as other sounds fill its place. "She called last week," Aunt Jo remarks, spreading jam thick on her slice of pie. I nod, unwilling to give much away. Forgiveness is easier in pieces. Trust rebuilds itself slowly, like moss creeping back after a heavy boot. I find small pleasure in repairs. Tightening a loose hinge on the screen door, replacing burned-out bulbs that leave shadows lurking where sunlight should be. Larry lends cools and advice, lefty-loosey, righty-tighty, and leaves behind 2 plums from his own tree as payment for my patience with his stories about LSU football. The routine is comforting, shared work for no reason but kindness. Neighbors wave when I pass by on walks with Polly, sometimes stopping to trade tomatoes or debate which bakery makes the best king cake. Kids ride bikes in lazy circles around our block, daring each other to ring doorbells or leap over cracks in the sidewalk without touching down. Their noise fills up spaces I didn't realize had grown so silent. Rain returns some nights with a vengeance, thunder shaking windows and water running ankle-deep along the curb. I light candles and listen to it drum on the roof while Polly curls against me, unconcerned by weather or memory. In those hours, it feels safe to let old hurts settle. Nothing here can be washed away that isn't ready to go. On Sundays after church, I sometimes walk through City Park alone, watching Spanish moss flutter in the breeze and thinking about how this city absorbs every joy and sorrow with equal appetite. Strangers nod as they pass. Dogs greet Polly by name now. There's comfort in being known, not for drama or disaster, but simply for being here every day. One hot afternoon, Lee appears at my door without warning, hair pinned back too tightly and eyes darting to every corner of my entryway as if expecting ghosts. She hands me a tin of lemon cookies, store-bought but heartfelt, and asks if she can sit a while. We share coffee on the porch. Conversation is stilted at first, but loosens when Polly drops her toy at Lee's feet, demanding play. I miss how simple things were, Lee confesses quietly, after a long silence broken only by passing cicadas. I don't contradict her. We both know they never were simple, but we let memory sweeten our tea just enough that sharing it doesn't sting. After she leaves, I scrub the mugs clean and wipe down counters until my hands ache pleasantly. The house feels no emptier than before. If anything, it expands to hold new air where old tension used to live. As holidays approach, I string up lights along the porch railings, wobbly and uneven but earnest, and invite neighbors for mulled cider over card games Mom once played with ruthless glee. Aunt Jo brings sweet potatoes roasted with marshmallows, and Larry carves turkey with showy precision, while everyone hollers advice he ignores with practiced ease. We argue amiably about whether store-bought rolls are ever better than homemade, or if cranberry sauce must come from a can for tradition's sake. The kitchen hums with voices rising over clinking glasses, and Polly's hopeful snuffling near every plate. Night settles gently after everyone's gone, the house warm from laughter, dishes soaking in sink water gone tepid and soapy under dim lights. I sit alone for a moment at the cleared table, listening for any echo of bitterness, but finding only gratitude thick as syrup. On quieter days, I visit Mom's grave, beneath oaks draped in moss, the headstone plain but dignified, among flowers left by hands unknown to me. Sometimes Lee joins me there. We stand together but apart, each lost to our thoughts until one of us breaks silence with some memory too bright or absurd not to share. We walk back slowly through rows of stones softening under sunset, less sisters than survivors, rebuilding something neither of us quite knows how to name yet. Occasionally, old anxieties tug at me, a letter addressed in Burgess's tidy scrawl or a bank statement bristles with official language. But now May fields these missives before worry can sprout into fear. Nothing urgent, she assures me with a wink during our monthly check-ins over pecan sandies and strong coffee at her office. Marty sends his reports without fanfare. Everything accounted for, still boring. Even boredom is welcome now. It means nothing needs fixing except maybe another loose shingle or cracked step out back. Some afternoons, Mrs. Laundry asks me to drive her to Winn-A-Dixie or Bingo, her stories looping between complaint and punchline. And afterward, we sit parked beneath live oaks, eating soft-serve cones that drip onto our wrists faster than we can catch them. At home, Polly greets me as if each return is heroic, a celebration that leaves fur on my pants and muddy prints across freshly mopped floors, no longer worth resenting. The days pass marked not by crisis, but small joys. Tomatoes stewing on the stove for Sunday supper, sunlight crawling across quilt patches on my bedspread, neighbors trading recipes through chain link fences just because they remember how good it feels to help someone else eat well. One evening, Amy brings news that she won an art scholarship, her city park painting now hanging in the library downtown beside works by strangers who will become part of her story too. We celebrate on the porch with sparkling lemonade poured into mismatched mugs while Polly barks her congratulations at passing cars, oblivious to everything except this small moment, multiplied by love. Lee calls less often as time goes by, but always sends cards at Christmas,
a peace offering signed Love from Us All. Sometimes she includes a recipe clipped from a glossy magazine or a snapshot of Larry holding grandkids too young yet for family politics. On these quiet nights, after dishes are done and porch lights flicker brave against darkness thick as velvet, I sit back, grateful, not triumphant, but present, content simply to be rooted right here among what remains.
A house no longer haunted, a name reclaimed, and dignity finally measured not by what was lost, but by all I found refusing to be moved again without my own consent. The first vignette comes on an ordinary Tuesday. Aunt Jo sits at my table spooning sugar into her tea, while Polly sprawls beneath us like a sentinel, guarding against loneliness itself. Sunlight filters through clean glass, casting honey-colored patterns onto fingered linoleum. Outside, magnolias bloom white against sky so blue it hurts your teeth just looking up too long. Jo grins over her mug. Your mother would call this fine enough. I believe her now, not because everything's fixed, but because nothing needs hiding anymore. The second vignette blooms on Community Day at City Park. Children run wild among zinnias near Amy's painting hanging bright inside library walls where strangers pause long enough to wonder whose gentle hand brushed those trees into being. Mrs. Landry waves me over, waving her bingo winnings, a package of discount cookies, and asks why I look lighter these days. I tell her quietly, some burdens you set down without anyone noticing, others you lay aside so carefully it takes years before you realize they're gone. The last scene unfolds late one night after rain, porch swing creaking gently beneath my weight, Polly snoring soft between old boots still muddy from afternoon walks. Lightning bugs dance above grass slicked silver, and somewhere inside, Mom's photo glimmers above quiet rooms, filled only with what we've chosen to keep close. Here, where no one directs my kindness or moves me without cause, I belong wholly to myself, to memory, to tomorrow shaped only by hands that finally learned how gentle justice can be when you claim it in your own good time. The next morning, I'm up before dawn, the light not yet creeping into corners and the kitchen cool beneath my feet. The coffee maker sputters and hisses as I measure grounds with an old spoon. The handle bent, but it still does the job. I slice one of my garden tomatoes for toast, the flesh bright and promising. Polly circles, tail wagging in lazy arcs, more interested in the possibility of crumbs than any sunrise. Aunt Jo calls to say she's coming by with scones. Don't put the kettle on, I like to do it myself, she insists. When she arrives, she settles in with her tin of pastries and immediately sets about rearranging the sugar bowls until they're just so. Your mother would haunt us both for letting them get dusty, she grins. I listen to her stories, some new, some familiar, while we eat. Outside, the street is waking up. A neighbor drags their recycling bin to the curb. Two children argue over who gets the bigger piece of sidewalk chalk. Jo's voice weaves in beneath it all, steady and warm. I always told your mother you'd land on your feet, she says, not looking at me as she smooths crumbs from her napkin. Later that day, I haul out an old watering can and tend the zinnias and tomatoes lining the walk. Mrs. Landry limps over from across the street with a bowl of figs and stays to gossip about city council shenanigans. She eyes my plants critically. You ever think about joining garden club? I shake my head. Too many committees in one lifetime. But I thank her for the figs. Inside, I find a note from Amy on the fridge, a sketch of Polly under my kitchen table, and a thank you for helping her frame her first art show entry. Her handwriting is lopsided but hopeful. I leave it right where it is. The next evening brings a thunderstorm so suddenly, it sends me and Polly scurrying under the porch roof just in time for the sky to open up. Rain hits the shingles like applause. Lightning flashes illuminate our little stretch of city block in stark white moments. Across the street, Larry waves from his garage, holding up a six-pack, as if inviting me to a secret club for survivors of bad weather and family drama.
When the storm eases, I step out into air that smells like wet earth and cut grass. My slippers gather mud. Polly shakes herself vigorously and trots inside ahead of me, leaving paw prints down the hallway. I don't mind cleaning up after her. There's comfort now in messes that belong only to us. On Saturday morning, Lee stops by without warning, just as I'm scrubbing paw prints off linoleum. She looks tired but softer somehow, holding out a loaf of banana bread awkwardly wrapped in wax caper. "Thought you might want this," she mumbles. We sit at my kitchen table for 15 minutes of small talk about weather, Larry's leaky garden hose, Amy's latest painting, never quite touching what happened, but not denying it either. At one point, she glances up at me over her mug. "You know, Mom always said you were too stubborn to be moved." There's a half smile there. It lands somewhere between an apology and a dare.
Amy comes by with new sketches, this time of trees along City Park's pond, and asks if we can bake brownies together for creative fuel. We end up eating half the batter before it hits the pan, laughing at nothing until our sides ache. I fix things around the house as they break, a dripping faucet here, a chair leg there, with tools borrowed from Larry or found buried in Mom's old sewing basket. Some jobs take longer than others. Some require nothing more than patience and elbow grease. Rainy days mean puzzles spread across the dining table while Polly noses pieces off onto the floor. Aunt Jo brings peach preserves in mismatched jars and critiques my progress without mercy. "Your mother could finish these with one hand behind her back." On clear mornings, I walk along River Road, letting memories come when they want. Mom waving from her porch swing, Lee pushing Amy on a tire swing strung from that old pecan tree. Myself, younger by decades, convinced that home would always mean people rather than paperwork or proof. Bit by bit, old resentments lose their edge, the hurt not gone but grown manageable with time and tamales shared over back fences or sidelong apologies passed across kitchen tables. Holidays arrive almost quietly now. Strings of lights wound around porch railings, pies cooling on windowsills while neighbors drift over carrying casserole dishes wrapped in foil. There are jokes about who will carve the turkey or whether sweet potato should ever come near marshmallow. Aunt Jo holds strong opinions, all folded into easy laughter that fills every room. After everyone leaves, even Lee, who lingers awkwardly at the end until I hug her tight enough to surprise us both, I close up the house alone, but not lonely. On evenings when sleep takes its time arriving, I sit with Polly out back watching stars blink into view above rooftops dark against indigo sky. The air is thick with crickets and distant music from someone's open window. For once, there's nothing pressing to defend or prove. Some days bring reminders, a stray letter from Burgess rattling with legalese or an insurance statement addressed in impersonal script, but they no longer set my teeth on edge. May handles what needs handling. Marty sends occasional emails signed off with cheerful indifference. Nothing exciting. One afternoon, at City Park Art Show, Amy's painting hangs beside works by strangers. Her name spelled right on the placard this time, and Mrs. Landry beams so wide you'd think she painted it herself. Amy clutches my hand through half the reception before running off to explain brushstroke choices to anyone willing to listen. Afterward, we stop for snowballs. Polly gets her own cup of shaved ice, just water, and watch clouds gather across Lake Pontchartrain while children shriek under fountains more for spectacle than shade. In quiet moments alone, reading letters from years gone by or folding laundry warm from the dryer, I feel something settle inside me that isn't regret or even pride, but relief. Dignity reclaimed not through battle, but through showing up day after ordinary day. The house holds fewer ghosts now. Walls echo less with arguments and more with simple joys.
a kettle whistling just before dawn, footsteps padding soft across worn pine boards, Polly snoring loud enough to rattle picture frames. There are days when rain keeps everyone home and laughter rises over board games played badly around Aunt Jo's tablecloth dusted with flour. Nights when silence feels like company rather than reminder of what was lost. When Lee writes now, sometimes enclosing recipes scribbled sideways on napkins or photos of Amy painting outside on sunny afternoons, I answer simply, "Doing fine here." Later, when quiet returns, I pour myself another cup of tea, stand in front doorway watching moonlight spill silver over zinnia petals, and think, this is what it means to stay put by choice, to love without ledger, to let kindness answer what betrayal never could. Aunt Jo perches at my battered kitchen table, polishing her reading glasses, while Polly tracks sunbeams across faded tile. The radio plays something slow as we sort recipe cards into neat piles. Pies first, priority, then cakes, so-so, then casseroles, emergency only. She pats my hand once before leaving, a gesture that says more than words ever managed. Community Day at City Park arrives hot and bright. Amy stands beside her painting, proud as anything, while Mrs. Landry brags about knowing the artist to everyone who listen. Children dart between picnic tables piled high with fried chicken and teen cake. Someone calls my name across laughter and music, spilling through low branches heavy with Spanish moss. On a night bent soft by rain, porch swing creaking beneath us, Polly snores through thunder while I count seconds between flashes. For every storm endured, there is this, a home where no one moves me without hearing what kindness sounds like when spoken aloud. By choice, by blood, by hard-won peace, earned one ordinary day at a time.